Hey everybody, and welcome back to Sweatpants BI. In this final video for our airline customer satisfaction survey full-length walkthrough, we're going to take our infographic and we're just going to zoom out so that we can look at the entire infographic as a whole and identify any areas that might need final touch-ups. We're also going to be adding some descriptive text to some of the open areas in the infographic to really help tell the rest of the story, and sort of give users a more storytelling narrative aspect to the infographic that they can clearly walk through in order to understand the main takeaways of each part of our infographic. And on the other side of this, we're going to be done. We're going to have this, really cool, visually striking infographic that can walk users quickly through all of the main data points and insights from our customer satisfaction survey. So very excited to sort of close this out. And on the other side of it, like I said, we're going to have this really, really cool, one pager that we could print out and share with people around Sweatpants Air, definitely like include in like an email or something, and also for you, maybe some very, very good guidance or inspiration for something that you could incorporate into a portfolio piece. So let's go ahead and close this out with our last short video on finishing touches. Now that we have our design completed, the next thing that we need to do is we need to take care of the open areas that we left deliberately for some kind of text description, some additional storytelling elements to really sort of tie all of these data visuals together. Ultimately, infographics are meant to be read from top to bottom. So what we want to do is we want to use this first open section that we left here to just present an overall summary of the insights that people are going to take away from our tool. And of course, in each of the subsections, we also left a little bit of a blank space just to tell a little bit more about the visuals that are in each section to kind of help the user with interpreting those data visuals more quickly. And of course, the final section down here is an open area called recommendations, where we're just going to add some final recommendations to the bottom of this to just sort of tie the entire story and all of its themes together. Now, I can't really think of anything more boring than asking all of you to just sit there and, watch me try to think of what to say in these values, because usually in these areas, I spend quite a bit of time sort of wordsmithing everything and trying to get it to fit perfectly in the area that I've allotted. So I'll be honest, I have already written the text for each of these sections, but I really want to show you, some things to keep in mind in formatting this text so that your most important insights are really going to jump off the page. Because, unfortunately, a lot of people are just not going to take the time to read every single word. People love to be able to scan these sorts of things. And adding, some, I would say, touch points or aids that help people sort of scan this text more quickly ultimately invites them to read the whole thing instead of risking them just giving up right out of the gate. So we've already sort of established some of the visual text techniques that we're going to use. And I'm sort of highlighting the different bolded white areas of text where the text is just subtly larger than all the text around it so that your eyes are really drawn to those sections. And we're going to utilize similar techniques in the text boxes that we add to each section. So first, let's just go ahead and drag our first text box into position. We know it's going to take up roughly this amount of space. Obviously, I don't need the background on this. I just need the text. And I'm going to use Segway UI, and I'm going to use 14 font, which it doesn't look like the 14 came over. So let's go ahead and make it 14 font. And I'm just going to kind of drag my text box until I can fit all of my text in here perfectly. Now, of course, we have a very, very dark blue background that makes all of this text up here very, very difficult to read, kind of in this area. Down here, the text gets a little bit easier to read because there's a gradient in the background and we have a lighter blue over in this section. So what we're going to do is I'm going to highlight everything and I'm going to brighten up this text a little bit by using a medium, or I would probably go with a lighter tone blue that is going to be easier for anybody who is reading this report to see. Now that our text is a little bit more visible, now we can go through and highlight what we think are the most important callouts in this paragraph of text. And of course, our 46-point increase in Net Promoter Score is something that we definitely want to call out. And we might even want to call out the fact that we're thrilled to say that the investments that the company made between 2021 and 2022 helped make this 46-point increase the highest single year increase in our Net Promoter Score in company history. So let's try also bolding and whitening this. All this highlighted text does is it just makes it a little bit easier for someone to jump in and immediately get the gist of this paragraph. Now that we have that first part completed, let's just go ahead and copy the text box and prepare for our next text call out, which is going to go over the passenger demographics section. And for this call out, all I'm doing is saying that there was a strong turnout for the 2022 survey with 65,236 responses, which was a 772 response increase from 2021. And I also spotlighted the fact that at least in this fake data set, 82% of the responses were from returning passengers. So let's go ahead and format this. Let's use the same 14 font that we used previously. And I'm just kind of dragging this so I can fit as much on one line as possible. And of course, we also want to brighten up this font by using the same light blue that we have over here. And it might make sense to call out our 65,236 responses, since we're also calling that out over here in one of our KPI bubbles. And I'm also going to call out this 82% were returning passengers. Again, you're just giving someone who is scanning this text quickly enough that they can sort of read this text even faster than if all of the text were the same color or presented the exact same way. Our next text blurb, of course, is for our Net Promoter section. Let's go ahead and make it 14 size font, light blue, and I'm going to increase it all like so. And here all I'm doing is I am, reiterating the importance of the 46-point jump in our Net Promoter Score from 1 to 47. And I'm calling out that the 47 NPS score in 2022 is a huge turnaround. Probably needs to be one word. And I'm also mentioning that they can use this slicer or the options below to explore the change in NPS in much greater detail. So here I'm going to call out the 46-point jump and the 47 NPS score in 2022. And I'm even going to call out the slicer as a tool that people can use to explore this data in greater detail. And now I'm going to try to make this just a little bit smaller since I think I have room for it. And that all looks good. For our next text box, which it doesn't look like it's copying over, so let me go ahead and grab it and pull this down. And the text that I'm going to use here is calling out that while the NPS itself is obviously impressive, what might be even more impressive to someone who is reading this information for the first time is how consistent and sustained satisfaction was year over year across so many of the passenger experience touch points. And so for this part, I'm going to call out specifically that we saw consistent and sustained satisfaction improvement. And last but not least, I want to make sure that I give, a fair amount of uh, color to this recommendations section that is a great way for us to sort of cap off all of the data visuals above in this infographic and sort of leave, the our audience or our viewer with sort of a call to action. I mean, obviously we've seen this huge improvement in our net promoter score, and there's a lot of really good news in this infographic, but what do we do next? So in our recommendations section, we're going to turn off our background. We're going to use the same 14 size font. And this time, since we have a much lighter background that's virtually white, instead of using a light blue, let's go ahead and use a dark blue for our color pop on these recommendations. And let's go ahead and highlight some of the things that are most important for someone to see when they're quickly scanning all of this information. So while we are so excited to see our year-over-year improvement across so many areas, there are always places to continue to grow, obviously. First, many of our customers continue to express frustrations with our ease of online booking. So this is something we can call out, and since we really want people to see this contrasted against all this blue text, let's go ahead and give this an orange call out to sort of draw the users to this part of the text. And so, of course, we're trying to improve ease of online booking. The booking part of our customer's journey, it continues to lag behind all other experience categories as demonstrated in the slope chart above. And while improvements have been made, our in-flight Wi-Fi service, so we'll go ahead and call this out, also continues to be a pain point for many of our long-haul customers. Makes sense, right? If you're on a long-haul flight, let's say you're flying from New York to England, you probably want to make sure that there's good Wi-Fi so that you can tinker on your phone for most of that long flight. And finally, we must also make sure to work with our transit and government partners to ensure that our flights are safely in the air on schedule. 2022 continued to show that late passengers have consistently lower overall satisfaction scores. That sounds like it's worth calling out, regardless of who shoulders the blame. And of course, this last sentence here is referencing this visual that we created up here, showing the linear negative relationship between satisfaction scores and the average delays of passengers getting off the ground or leaving the airport. Before we wrap things up, the last thing that we always want to do with an infographic is look at the whole thing, completely scaled out. Everything's going to be small, but we just want to look at it from, about as far away as we can get it, just to see where our eyes immediately are drawn. So let's go ahead and go back to view, and let's change our page view to fit to page so that we can see what it looks like as a whole. One thing that I'm noticing is that, maybe there's a lot going on down here. These visuals look a little bit cluttered. That's fine. We can continue to work with some of the fonts and stuff to kind of make this a little bit less oppressive. But one thing that I'm immediately noticing is that my eyes are really drawn to these two huge numbers, 2022 responses and 2023 responses. Of course, I gave them huge bubbles, right, in order to embed those two metrics within the passenger demographics section. But now I'm asking myself, are these two numbers really that important? It's really just the number of responses on the survey. I would argue that these are not terribly important numbers for the report, other than just to contextualize how many people responded to the survey. Ultimately, NPS is the real headline here in this 46-point increase in our net promoter score. So let's explore some techniques to reduce the focus on these two numbers and increase the focus on these two numbers. And so right away, I'm just going to go ahead and select these two bubble cards here. And let's go ahead and go to our properties and our size. And let's go ahead and drop this down to, let's see if we can get away with 190 by 160. That ought to still be pretty circular as opposed to looking a little bit elongated or like an oval. So I think that this is probably a pretty good size for these. Now, obviously, my text is cut off a little bit. So let's go ahead and go to our style and our text settings. And instead of going with a 35 font, let's see if a 25 font is enough for us to see the whole number. And it looks like it is. So now I'm going to go ahead and switch back to fit to width. And I'm just going to scroll down a little bit so that I have a little bit more precision. Because now, by making these two numbers smaller, I have a little bit more room to play with for my donut charts and my bar chart. So let's go ahead and increase the size of our donut charts. Might even be able to get away with 335. And I'm going to go ahead and just add some spacing between these. And while I'm here, I'm actually not very partial to the default spacing on the donut chart, which I think is like 60%. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and change this to 75% just so that it looks a little bit sleeker, but anybody can obviously still read this. I'm also noticing that for whatever reason my Economy Plus is cut off again. So let's go ahead and go to our rotation settings and let's change this to 40% rotation just to make sure that Economy Plus is not cut off. So basically we're just taking a minute to kind of go through each section and format it so that, and also check for spelling mistakes and do things like that. But once we finish one of our reports, we just want to give it another pass. Now I'm going to focus a little bit on my NPS cards. And the first thing that jumps out to me is that I call out this 46-point jump here. So maybe I want to take the card that I built down here and drag it up to the top and make it a little bit bigger, since it's kind of my headline, right? I'm literally saying that our biggest headline was the 46-point jump. So why would I want to put my 46-point card down here when I can put it up here next to the text that describes it? So for my next two cards, let's go ahead and reorder those. And I think that 2022 NPS and 2021 NPS probably makes sense to fit down here. Just very quickly, I'm going to go ahead and resize these. And let's see how 170 by 150 looks. That looks pretty good to me. Then I'm going to go ahead and drag these down. Got a little bit more room for my year-over-year change. That looks good to me. And as I said, this area just looked a little bit cluttered. So one thing that we can do, let's go ahead and zoom back out. Whoops. That's our mobile layout. Let's go ahead and change this back to fit to page. And one reason that I think my eyes are really drawn down here is all of this white text. So one thing that I'm going to do very, very quickly is I'm going to fit to width. I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to select both of these. And it does look like they're different styles of bar chart, so it's not going to let me do them both at the same time, but that's fine. Let's go ahead and select the first bar chart, and for our y-axis, let's change the font to something else. Let's see how this looks maybe with a light gray. Ultimately, all we want is just enough color there for someone to be able to read it pretty easily. You could probably even get away with experimenting with some of the darker shades of blue. But, I'm just going to play around with this for a second. I think that the dark blues are way too dark blue for me. I don't think it looks terrible, but there's not a lot of contrast there. So I'm going to go back to my original idea of just working with some light gray for my y-axis text. I'm also going to reduce the size here just a little bit, which is going to make everything look a little bit more readable. And now when I zoom back out, at least for me, my eyes aren't quite pulled down here the way that they were. Or at the very least, I think that I find this looks a little bit more attractive from a top-down view. And now we're pretty much done with our report. Yes, we could sit here all day and continue to make little refinements and little aesthetic pops or cosmetic changes to this, but I mean, fundamentally, we've got everything down on the page that I was hoping to put on here. I still think that the images are a nice touch for immediately tipping off the user that there are 3 sections that make up this report. There's a lot of sort of change and variety over here on the right that makes me kind of want to read across and understand what these icons are and what these numbers are. And there's plenty of like dynamic formatting and text elements that kind of make me want to figure out what this entire story is. This infographic at a glance makes me feel eager to read more about it. So that wraps up our infographic demonstration. Thank you so much to everyone who checked out this series. Thank you so much to everyone who has said super encouraging things to me on LinkedIn and on YouTube about these walkthrough series videos. I promise I'm already working on several more concepts for these full-length Power BI report build and design demonstrations. If you enjoy these series, by all means, let me know either here or on LinkedIn. And of course, if you enjoy Sweatpants BI and this channel's content, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It does really help me out, especially now that I'm starting to, get past that 1,000 subscriber milestone and start thinking about, what I want to do with this channel moving forward. I am so grateful to the community for all of the support. I hope that these videos are helping you become the best possible Power BI developers that you can, and that they're helping you sort of, flex your creativity and inspiration muscles when it comes to data visualization, storytelling, and design. Thank you so much from me, Sean. I'll see you next time on Sweatpants BI.